Okay, so moving right along, our own fireball, Mr. Moffa, is going to come tell you about what's new in the next version of Auros. You heard a little bit about it this morning, how we run our software factory in Auros and a number of other processes. So here's the stuff.
Alrighty then. It's on. Okay, there we go. Alrighty then, I'll be your final presentation for the day. I'll take the opportunity to thank you all for coming out to this year's KnowledgeWare conference, and I sure hope that I see all of you here next year as we continue to grow the conference. As I mentioned earlier, we're up 30% this year, and I would assume or imagine and hope that we have a similar growth next year. I think that this presentation, at least for me, is the most fun. I love talking about the new technologies. Most of you who know me know that I'm quite passionate about product. And always am looking forward to the next feature and the innovation that we can continue to bring to your enterprises and to completely fulfill the vision of what the KnowledgeWare concept promises. The idea of active knowledge and provisioning that knowledge into the flow of work where it materially impacts the performance of your organizations. That's what this is all about. So, that said, let's take a look at version 8.1. Now, my colleague Josh was talking about our next launch in terms of counting down the days to the launch. I think that's his perspective. He already did mention, too, that we have successfully moved back from 14-month cycle, 15-month cycle, which I think was our last one, to a 6-month cycle, by and large, based on the improved performance by using Auros ourselves, right? So not only were we able to increase the discipline in the process to visualize where the problems were to take them out, but we're also able to nudge that process and continuously improve it now that we're really our foundation of software factory process is in Auros. Our content management has always been there, but now that our process of software factory is there, it really helps us to stay on track and do things better with each release. And it's absolutely, I think most of you probably have seen the results of the improved process in terms of improved product. So again, now we're on a 6-month cadence, which is really excellent. That means the 8.1 release that Josh talked about in terms of, what'd you say, Josh, 17 days? I mean, you guys can do the math. 17 days. So this is our release date. That was the release date we planned. That's the release date we're going to have. So that's a good thing. There's approximately 170 specific product improvements, a lot more product actions, but the specific enhancements that we have are these 170, and I'm going to talk about just a few of them here in a second. As a direct result of that, our next release will be 6 months from then. So that's a good thing. Our content emphasis, and I'll talk a little bit more about this at the end after we go through some of the specific improvements in the product in this upcoming release. But our content emphasis remains, we started this about 6 months ago, but our look at how AI is going to shape the future of the KnowledgeWare vision. Okay? And I had a conversation with a couple of you in some of the breaks about how AI is going to work, or how does it interact with this KnowledgeWare vision. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that later. And I do plan to have some first incarnations of AI assist in knowledge capture. Okay? So using some fairly traditional AI methods. We're going to continue to work on and improve the automation of evaluation. So a lot of customers, I think, can understand, well, we're doing a really good job, but it results in so many knowledge packets in my assessments. We're like, oh, that's a good thing, or is it a bad thing? Well, there's a certain amount of knowledge that needs to be brought to bear in an engineering decision, and having too much and you don't actually evaluate it just means you're not going to consider something that should be considered. So the practice and the promise of KnowledgeWare is to automate the processing of that knowledge sufficiently so that virtual unlimited amount of knowledge can be processed against a decision. That's the goal. So while you may be increasing in the short run as we bring the knowledge-aware vision to you and make it more and more real, may result in something that looks like more work. It's not going to be, and it's going to avoid a lot of problem fixing down the road. That's the promise. So we're going to continue to work on how well and how easy it is to get this automation, the evaluation of the knowledge in the process. We've got some great examples out here, and I know there's some examples that probably weren't discussed today where knowledge is being evaluated dynamically as the digital environments that is the workflow is able to communicate with the knowledge directly, and we're able to process this. I know there's a bunch of different people working on specifically that aspect of knowledge aware, and the more the digital environments drive our process, the more opportunity we're going to have to evaluate this automatically. And is there anybody who thinks that digital environments are going to be declining? Right? We're all model-based as we go forward. Okay, so, and then the last thing is our efforts to create a compelling user experience. So we are really looking for your insights, your suggestions, and we're certainly doing our research, and I'm going to show you some things here that we've done recently to try to create a more compelling user experience. Okay, any questions about content plans and releases? I'm going to try to keep this one as interactive as possible, so I'm going to keep asking for questions. So if you got one, just have it on the ready. Okay? Nothing so far? Okay. All right, so I'm going to break down just a few of the most interesting changes in 8.1, which, as Josh said, is coming out in 17 days. The first one is just a little bit of a UI upgrade for the assessment control. We've been talking about assessment controls in every presentation today. And some of you took a later version of the last release and have seen these things. They seem subtle, but I think they're really interesting improvements. So this is a very basic assessment control. And what we've done, for those of you who haven't seen it yet, we've changed the way you navigate through the assessment control. So the different views are slightly more well laid out. We've added something that we call the DOM key button after our application engineer, Kurt Domke, whose idea it was to basically go into simple mode. Right? So with one click, you're now in a simple mode, all the buttons are gone, and all you're doing is looking at the evaluation sheet. So I like to use that button quite a bit. It gives you more real estate in addition to simplifying the view. Another thing we've done is we've taken the assessment and we've given a view of status in terms of this bar chart. That bar chart is showing you the complete constituency of an assessment. So when you get 30, 40, 70 items in assessment control, this becomes really a nice way to view the constituency of the assessment without having to just circle through it. And it's also a filtering device. So if we wanted to go ahead and just filter down, and you can see as I take these off, we're actually filtering the view, removing line items, rows from the assessment just by clicking on the bar chart, and it's recalculating the result. So you're getting this dynamic interaction with the constituency of the assessment. So I'll just turn these back on by hitting reset. And you see this is dynamic. If I go to, well, let me turn the greens off. And if I turn, so continually it changes with the filtering. I wanted to do this after I showed you this. So there's another thing that we've added, and this is this completion graph. So you kind of have to be nerdy inside the tool to really get fully what's going on here. But now the palette of conformance, that first column that has the color, now has this extra attribute that's been added. It's called completion. So the statuses are known to the system of whether that status is to be considered complete in terms of work to be done, right? So now once that attribute is there, we can now calculate a completion or how much more work needs to be done in the assessment relative to the statusing of the individual line items. So obviously the first status NE is something that is not complete, is an incomplete status. So by completing the status, if I change this over to green, for example, okay, I changed the bar chart and I went to 78%. And the whole bar will turn green once that's complete. So just as some modest enhancements and interactivity with the assessment control itself. Like I said, we're passionate about improving the experience with the assessment control, and visualizing these things graphically is just a nice way of doing it. Any questions about these modest improvements to the assessment control user experience? Okie doke. Okay. Let's see. Let's go back. Okay, the next one is kind of a big deal for us. So again, we're working hard to increasing and creating a compelling user experience. So those of you that are familiar with Auros know that it's a community-first process. And we also know that for new users, that can be confusing. It works really well for power users. So we reimagine the entire user engagement model with Auros in terms of an activity-first paradigm. So we call this activity-first user experience versus the community-first user experience. So what happens when we went to an activity-first is we came up with this idea called smart tiles. So I'm going to go over and go into the smart tile interface. And you can see what it is a palette of tiles that force you through, that allow you to see the palette of activities before you ever choose a community. And then the community then is directed after the activity. So I maybe want to raise an issue, and if I raise an issue, it then directs me through the process of which activities require community and which communities are applicable to that activity. So you have to be a little bit familiar with Auros to understand how different this is in terms of a user engagement. It's also the more modern kind of feel to the application. So as a possibility of a landing page for new users who haven't thought about community, they've just been told, oh, you got to raise an issue. You have to create an assessment. You come to this landing page, and it's far more intuitive for that kind of user to do that and then be told why they need to go to a community, to limit choice lists or to place the data properly. It makes much more sense. So this is something we call smart tiles. We're going to do a lot with this in 8.2 as well, in terms of determining and trying to calculate which tiles are appropriate for different users. And the tiles do different things depending on what kind of tile it is. You'll see as I mouse over them, the content is specific to that user on the tile and the specific roles of that. So this is a big deal. This is a fairly big change that will be in the next release of Auros. So smart tiles. What do you think? Mr. Mayhew. Oh, we like it. Someone likes it.
So is this default for new folks coming into the system, or how's that Sorry. So is this going to be the default UI for new people coming into the system, or how will it work with existing users?
Okay, the answer is it is not going to be the default user interface. We wanted to go through at least one release with it not being the default. That said, I know there's a way that we can, if this is deployed on your site, there's a way we can make that happen. But by default, the default is no. You won't have that as the default landing page for your new users. Now, every user, once in the system, through the user settings page, which is now over here, they can set it to the tiles. So if they like tiles, they can set it. So their landing page will be the smart tiles. So based on the user experience that we measure feedback from you, and you guys will tell us, hey, we need to make this the default landing page for new users, or what business logic is appropriate. I mean, we'll be looking for you guys to give us some experience, pointing at GM because I know that they got a big stake in that. We took a conservative approach. Good question, though. Anybody want to offer up an opinion about this style of interface, what they think? Does it look promising? Some of the users who understand the difference between activity first versus community first? Please.
Something that we are implementing in our SharePoints, instead of having a lot of subfolders and subfolders, we're implementing similar to the smart tiles. So people try to go faster where they want to go, and it's cleaner as well.
Yes.
It's more easier for the new user, or even for an experienced user. Instead of browsing and looking for where should I go and put my data, just go there and go a couple of clicks. It's basically the mentality, I just want to do 2 clicks and go to where I want.
Right. And it's more intuitive, the direction on how to get there.
Sure.
So my own experience with this is I thought as a power user of Auros, I would not like smart tiles. And this is a very recent change for me. I found that I'm starting to prefer them. And there's a lot of reasons I won't get into right now, but I found that it's easier actually moving across communities by going to the activity first. It takes a little adjustment if you're used to the old way, but I'm finding that even for power users, this is a better way of doing business. Okay. Any more questions on smart tiles? Yes, Tim.
Is there any vision for smart apps? So if we're thinking about, I'm out remote and they need my opinion on something to maybe conclude an assessment of some sort, I think this is really helpful to get down that road, right?
I would think so.
I'm just envisioning that we might get to that point where we're more smart app enabled in this, right?
And if we can find specific use cases to help foment those kinds of features, that's what we're looking for. I don't think there's any company here that we haven't come across a specific use case and use that as the vehicle for introduction of an innovative feature. Right? I know all of you have contributed to the Auros product that way.
Jeff, hi.
Carlo.
I was just wondering, in your smart tile, like if you hover over issues, for example.
Let me do that.
Okay, just as an example. So you've got the my issue, the raise issue, the find issue, and then you have the more there, which I see what you're going there, but I was wondering, as an interface, we're used to seeing these like thick bands. So if you would hover over issue, one of it would be like the layers of the thick bands that you can, so now that you're into issue, you can jump to the issue, like raise an issue or the reports or like the
Are you
different
talking about
options.
drilling down into sub-options?
Well, it's like if I hover over issues, now I don't only see the box, but I can see the options below.
Sub-options.
Sub-options below, so I can hover over issue and then click directly to the one. So it's like I'm saving a drill down
Right,
just
right.
by going to it and visually seeing it.
Right.
So.
So I can see where you're going. And that could actually be a direction we take this. But our vision for this release was to create the simplest possible onboarding page for new users. And we didn't want to go to sub-options too quickly. Otherwise, we're just getting back to complex interfaces for advanced users. But it may indeed be something that we can then turn on and off for advanced users versus new users. So it's something that we can definitely grow into. As long as we start to like this, the smart tiles kind of interaction with Auros.
Okay, one thing that also that I like to see is that we're graphically programmed in the sense that the choices, like you probably associate a type of little graphical icon to each one of these so that you, after a while, your mind doesn't read the words, it looks for the images, and you associate images a lot faster than you associate words. So like your my issues, if you'd have an icon associated to that, or raise, if you have an icon associated to that, you would have those along with it, and it'll help the user to click quicker.
On the tiles itself?
On the tile itself.
Exactly. Yeah. So back to the original purpose. So we had designs where we maintain the icons on the menu items here, and that is actually something that is less valuable to the new user for this was designed for. So yeah, again, there's definitely a trend in software design to remove icons.
Oh, really?
There is. There really is.
No. Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah. Okay. Oops, I went to the... Number 3, project space Teamboard summary review. So we've seen a couple different customers talking about Teamboards. They're becoming quite popular. We use them extensively ourselves in Auros, on Auros. And one of the new features with respect to Teamboards in this next release is the summary feature. So Josh showed you this earlier. This is our company. This is our project space. These are our projects. Our release projects are there. And different people, different teams are associated with these different projects. This is my view. I'm seeing almost all the projects in the company. Now let's say I just wanted to see the summary. I wanted to go into each of these team boards and pull up the summary of the timing elements from those teams, right? That's something that you might want to do. So we now have that ability. So what I'll do is I will filter down, and there's a variety of different ways to filter. Here I'll just do it on the releasing type projects. So these are projects that are releasing some kind of product. And I'm going to go now into this summary view. So in the summary view, in this release, we're giving you 2 bits of data, and we're going to add 2 or 3 in 8.2. So what this is it's taking and consolidating just those team boards, just the timing elements. So if I can drop this down a little bit, these are the released projects that we've got. So we're releasing a SolidWorks connector, an NX connector, a Team Center connector, and we have our 8.1 software factory that Josh showed you just recently. And we can blow down into the timing elements and view them side by side in the Gantt chart. So we have quite a unique innovation relative to timing and Gantt charting here, because we're doing top-down timing, bottom-up timing, and inside-out timing, and now we're doing a dynamic consolidation across these charts without having to manage it, right? It's just doing it dynamically. So it's really cool. For me, I can see all the significant release timing events across release of different software products, across different software product development teams, and it's all managed through process. Josh showed you the process. Those timing elements are being calculated in the standard work methods, and then their statusing is calculated in the team board, and I just instantly get a view of whatever summary version of these projects I want that's important to me. I think it's pretty cool, and I think it's going to be extremely valuable to the companies that are using team boards. I can also do this with issues. I'm going to talk about this as a separate advancement, but we've done quite a bit of work on aging, issue aging, and understanding and visualizing the aging of issues. I know that it's been a huge surprise to me how widely adopted our issues management system has been. And what's so cool about our issues management system? Different topic, but we continue to add and make it even better. And so this dynamic issue aging and understanding where open issues are is something we're going to work really hard on, and we've got a lot of features in this particular release. So I'll show you this. But these are views of issue aging for the team boards that I've filtered for, and it's a summary. So if I was responsible for 3 different projects, I can see the older open issues and through different views, the histogram view and the issue type breakdown, with very little work. I just go to the board of boards, I summarize, and bam, I can visualize. And this has complete drill down, so we can go and say, okay, these are really old issues, let's go look at them, and it's just going to blow down directly into the detailed view of that. Super cool, super useful to me. Okay, next. Any questions on the summary view? Yes, Nicole. The summary view, okay, so the answer is yes and no. The summary view of the timing elements require the team board. The summary view of the issues does not.
So the previous slide you had, where you had the histogram and then
You can get to that without team boards. I'm
So
going to show you that in a second.
All right, thank you.
Yes, I'm going to show it to you. We got another question over here. The resource elements attached to them, currently we cannot do that. We can show the work items that have been attached between timing elements. So we have the ability to take like an issue or an assessment, which is an item of work, and attach it into that view, and then it will show up in the summary view, those items. But resources like people, human capital, those kinds of machine time, we're not doing that yet. We'll get there.
Hey Jeff, one other area that I would just like to forward as maybe an idea is not only the closure of the issues, but maybe the closure rate as well.
Yeah,
because you have issues that are coming on board just as much as you're taking them off. Right?
That's awesome. So we're doing a whole bunch with that right now. So you saw that when Josh was showing you our software factory team board. We manage content plans with issues and assessments. and we have these things called KPIs that Josh didn't talk about, but we can visualize and track over time the actual rate at which they're being created, taken out. We can take those, like a creation rate and a close rate, and give you the difference between the two of them and track that aggregate number. So these KPI things are super, super powerful, and we've got that in the current release. Okay. Continuous learning. All right. This is a big part of where I believe we're going as a company in terms of AI, in terms of getting more involved in the automation and capture of knowledge. So, for example, you learn something at one plant, you need to know that it's going to be replicated at 4 plants. You learn something at one product launch, you need to make sure that it gets back into the design of subsequent products. So the problem or the failure is captured an issue, you get these issues, you may get several of the same issue. How do you understand that and understand where the knowledge needs to be created and then get it into a KPAC, which then can be assessed? So in this release, we started that process, and you will now have, you see this icon at the top of an issue, and the issue will allow you to convert it directly to a KPAC or several KPACs. So it's asking me what community I want to create it in. I'll create it in the, well, I guess it doesn't matter. It's created in the tooling. And it's going to take the elements of the issue and it's going to try to auto map them. And I haven't gone through configuring this completely, but it'll be able to auto connect to the issue elements, hit go, and then your KPAC has been created with a permanent link back to the KPAC, and it'll track all the KPACs that were created against a given issue. I don't want to spend too much time on that, but it's a very big deal for us to be able to visualize, to cluster issues, understand, and create knowledge content from issues. So big deal for us in the future. But in this release that you get in 17 days, you'll be able to take an issue and create one or more KPACs and keep the linkage between the two. So very efficient. Just here's the issue, I want to create a KPAC, and then once it's a KPAC, you all know now we can get it into an assessment control and propagate that learning to other plants, to other projects, to other release events. Questions? It's good?
Jeff, can you go back from when you create a KPAC, will you be able to go back and figure out where, okay.
Yes.
Because right now we can reference in an issue, hey, we created this KPAC, and we can use the hashtag to link to it, but.
You want to go from the KPAC to the issue.
Right.
Now
so that we can say the reason this is important is because we had this issue in the past, and that's why we have the knowledge.
So the data is there. I don't know that we're visualizing 8.1. I don't think we got it in. So it's not, right? It's not. Okay, so we understand it's an absolute must. This enhancement to do this part of it came in late, and that part of it fell off the content plan. But it's absolutely part of the content plan. So it's there. We're just not visualizing it.
Yeah,
currently.
So it's a problem we have had when we're coming across existing knowledge is where did this come from?
Right.
So that's the link that would be awesome to have.
Right, and we want to be able to not just have the link, we really want to be able to visualize it and start to use AI to auto-categorize it and say, well, this is the kind of the topic area that's driving changes. And we want to put that into a better visualization, graphic visualization, not just list the stuff and link it. We want to go far beyond listing and linking.
Hey, Jeff.
Over here, okay?
So if you have multiple issues that are common, can you create a KPAC
Yes.
from multiple?
That's not in this release, but I'm going to talk about that in a second. In this release, you can go one issue to multiple KPACs. In 8.2, it's our plan that you'll be able to take a cluster. This is the AI thing I'm going to be talking about. We have to be able to visualize issues that are within a certain density. If you can think of topic coherency as a spatial distance, how dense may tell us whether a topic is there. So if you have issues in a close spatial density, in terms of their correlation to each other on topic, and we can use AA techniques for this, these auto classifiers. Then we can start to understand that we can name the topic, name the cluster, and then take those issues that are in that cluster and tie them to an assessment, or tie it to the new KPAC that you're creating. And then as new members of the cluster come into the issue, they're also automatically now associated with that KPAC in the future. Right? So it's kind of a really cool relationship that we can get. And it's something that we can learn from. We're really about this continuous learning, right? Not just the assessment part.
Another question. So on your question before, because I'd asked if I create an issue from an assessment that was already linked back to the issue, can I get that issue showing up as one of those little icons up in the upper corner that says there's an issue that was pulled from this KPAC within the assessment, so that they're linked prior to, so not coming from what was created from it, but I created the issue from the KPAC assessment,
Yep.
and then have it show up in the KPAC as it's an open issue tied to this KPAC as long as it's open.
Can't we do that already through a report? So
That was the same thing you said last time.
and so we can't. So
You should be able to, so that's why I'm
Yeah.
asking to see if we've turned on a little icon, because we've got the three
Yeah.
little icons up in the corner, so to identify that there's been a new issue pulled up
So
for this KPAC.
on a particular KPAC, you want to see all the open issues or the closed issues?
Or at least, like a little something.
Okay, let's get that one into the mix in the product
Okay.
plan. If it's not already there through report somehow, it should be fairly straightforward.
I don't think we found anything yet, right? No.
Okay.
So, yeah, that would be awesome.
So continuous learning, very important. Next is issue aging. We've kind of already talked about it because it came into the summary report, but now as I promised, I'm going to go into, well, at the top of every single issue, you now have the issue age in days. So when an issue closes or achieves a status that is considered complete, it stops aging it. We're also in the background tracking how much time it's spent at each stage of issues, so we can start to visualize where issues getting stuck, these kinds of things. But I mean, the easiest thing, and this has already had a profound effect for me in looking at our content plans and where the issues are in terms of how old they are and which kinds of issues are staying older and those kinds of things. So right at the top, you see that, but we also have the new report, so I'll get into that real quick. I think you just saw it. Where is it? Right, so we build the aging report. It's on the left. It's an aging report. We build it. You got the drill down by age, and then the age by issue type, and then you can use this slider to kind of rework which issues show up and how long they come. Right, so it's a really cool feature. So if you're involved in a bunch of projects, you go pick your scope of issues, and then you find all your old issues, and then you can kind of play with them from there.
So on the previous where you had the issue, so I just noticed a new little thingy, and
Oh, you want to see the issue detail view?
because I made a little comment before. You have the issue status up in the corner, and now it's a little pie chart. Did you change your statuses?
No, that's configurable by customer. So for us, when we do it, we use what's called a Harvey ball system, and the circles, the different circles and how they're colored in mean something to us. You can, at GM, you could turn that feature on or off. Right now, I believe you're just using color.
So is that like a full system, or is it individual issue type? Or it's full system?
It's full
Okay,
system.
That's what I would think. Okay.
That's full system.
All right, thanks.
Okay, moving along. This is another new, as you can see, we spent quite a bit of time on issues. This is called, well, what happened? Well, just tested this 2 seconds ago. Go back. Did I lose internet? Nope. Now for this one, I'll just show you the picture. There's something called the issues heat map. What it's doing is it's showing you any two attributes of the issue, and showing you by color the density of those issues existing. So you can cross-reference any two attributes of an issue and get this heat map. So it's really used for visualizing where issues are being created and where issues are. It's just a new issues report. Okay, the last two I'm going to go through in any kind of detail I think is really important. There's a few of you that I think this will be super important to you. As we attempt to automate the evaluation of knowledge and knowledge packets, and we turn knowledge packets into models in and of themselves, the parameterization of those models becomes very important. And those of you who are familiar with how we're doing this understand that there's a lot of, it relies a lot or can rely heavily on parameter names, right? And what are the key parameters of any decision? So what becomes important from there is how do we name them, right? And so what we've done in this version of Auros, and we spent a lot of time on this, and I really think it came out pretty cool, is a parameter naming wizard. So now if you have at your company ways that you want parameters to be named, you now have a way to enforce that and to propagate those names to digital environments. Okay, that sounds like a lot, but it's really straightforward. What it means is that should have gone to I'm in the wrong community. Let me just change communities real quick. Maybe I do want that one. Okay, so I'm in a community, and the community can inherit globally something called the global parameter wizard, and then, or a community can then take that global parameter wizard and modify it to suit their needs. So what it is a schema. It's a way for you to develop a schema of parameter naming convention and then have end users be able to compute new parameter names based on that convention. So what we have here is a four-step or four-category parameter name schema. So we have category 1, which is called assembly name, and it is configured individually through a user interface that looks like this. So the category has a name, has a description, has a bunch of different configuration elements. Do you want it to be all caps, under caps? How do you want it? Does it have a choice list? Do you allow type in? And then it requires an assembly of these categories down to something we call a type, which identifies a type of measurement or a type of data that's expected. That's just a best practice that we recommend. It's not enforced here, but it's a good idea. And then these are composited up. So this is basically a rule editor for how these parameter names can be constructed. And it applies to the community. What does that mean? So that means I'm going to get out of the admin area here, and I'm going to go into, oops, I want to log out. I'm going to go into the community. And I got a KPAC, and I want to start to develop the knowledge model in it. And it works for methods too. This is just a basic KPAC. I'm keeping it simple. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add a value table. For those of you who are familiar, this is how we edit the knowledge model within a KPAC. This is kind of the rule processing unit. And without getting into creating it specifically, I'm just going to identify the parameter. So when I go into the parameter now, instead of typing it in, I now have a wizard that makes me create the parameter that's specific to what I want to do, but within the rules of the parameter naming convention. So now I can say, for this one, what I'm really interested in is, okay, it's a console, substrate, rib, length, okay? So now it's actually calculated that parameter name for me on the top area, and I can just simply accept it to use it. And so now multiple authors within the community will be able to create intelligent conforming parameter names that now can be exchanged with other digital modeling environments, and the rule processing becomes more seamless, more on the fly, okay? So instead of people just typing in radius every time, rib height every time, now we get this intelligent parameter naming convention. And because we've got a global version of it that can be augmented at the community level, we have a an organization-wide parameter naming convention that can be adapted and adopted at the community level and modified for the community level purpose. As we go into this digital model, the model-based communication, this stuff becomes really important. It may not be super obvious, or maybe it is, but for me, this is kind of a really cool new feature. Questions about the parameter naming wizard? Alex, what do you think? This is kind of right up your alley. Thumbs up? Yeah, I think you did. It was something that was on our minds, but I do think, yeah, you guys got us off, get us going, and we appreciate that. Thumbs up from you, that's a good sign. Any questions?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how are you integrating and managing those at an enterprise level as opposed to just Auros?
Right. So Auros also, and the existing features, we also have this idea of global parameter and local parameter. What I just did was all local. We can use the same parameter naming schema wizard to create global parameters. Then we create a library. That library then is defined and can be reused both inside of Auros and outside. So what we would ask is that integrating systems use as the gold standard for reusable parameters and their metadata. Where does this parameter get used? How does it get used? Goes to Auros as a knowledge service, just like you go to Auros for rules, but you go to Auros for the gold source for what parameters are and where they should be used, and then those parameters are reused by those systems, then our knowledge packets then can dynamically connect to them, and you're using the same dictionary of parameters for models across model spaces. Super cool for those of you who do design automation. And there's a lot of you out there. Okay, we're getting down to the end. So I already kind of showed this earlier. I'm going to show you again. Auros is now being a knowledge modeling language, not just a listing of requirements. It's deeper than that. The individual items, the knowledge packets can be models themselves. Josh showed you our method of software factory, where the threshold of passing to one phase to the next is all rules driven through these parameterization and algorithms that drive our process. Now that we've got the data that's being captured, but just not through extra work, it's just there because we're at that level. The impact of what we can do is we can statistically look at this data. And I showed you in my, when Josh was up here giving his really, really lucid presentation about Auros on Auros walking the walk, I got up and I showed, well, even at the strategic level, we were boiling up these parameters. I was using a new feature, and it's this idea that we can take any knowledge packet that has been parameterized, and so here's one that's being evaluated, and it's the pin engagement length. Okay, these pins, these locating pins, get measured all the time. Their engagement length gets measured all the time across different parts. I want to know, in the 1,500 assessments we've done, what's the most these pins have ever engaged the part? What's the least they've ever engaged part? What's the average, right? So do you want to go and go into every CAD model, remeasure them, and then try to figure that out? Or do you just want to click and say, what is it, right? So now, click and what is it is at hand. So I just click on the number. I'm going to go back historically and look back in time. I'm going to go back to 2015. I'm going to look at what we call an extended view, which gives us all the data points. And now we're looking at all the design space that's ever been explored against that key design parameter. And it's just there at your fingertips. Using the assessment, connecting it to CAD, now the key parameters are identified simply because we have knowledge against them, not because we said, oh, this one's important. No, it's we authored knowledge against it, so it's important, right? It makes sense. And as soon as it is, and we make decisions and evaluate, go through design reviews, the data is automatically captured and we can visualize this kind of stuff historically. So when I did it, the plot earlier, the values were actually the values that were being explored by the seed projects. All the seed projects were reporting this composite health based on a bunch of other sub-characteristics, but the seed project health composite value was there, and I was looking across the seed projects historically, and it's giving me, let's see, min, max, average, standard deviation. Okay, you don't have to be a stats major to understand how that's kind of nice. That's free of charge. Using assessments and value tables, you get all that for free now. Just click on that value and plots it out for you. Questions on this? I saved this one for last because I think it's the coolest. No questions on this one? Okay, real quick, some other changes in the system. I'm a little bit over, but I'll go real quick. Assessment approvals, the visualization has changed to be consistent with issues approvals. GM, I think you guys will like this because it just makes it a lot more visual, a lot more intuitive user experience on approvals. It looks better. It's been boiled down to more the essential elements of the approvals, and it just works a lot better. The assessment pie charts are now in the assessment search result columns. I'm sorry, you have to be kind of Auros nerds to know this stuff, but when you do a search for assessments, you kind of just saw a list. You can always see the Kanban view, but now we've taken the pie chart off the Kanban card and we've actually put it in the grid view too. So you can, without going into the assessment, you can see, if there's reds, you can see how much has been evaluated just visually through the pie chart. It's really nice, just nice visual enhancement. Super easy to do too. Thanks to our GM partners, we now have assessments record retention management. So we had record retentions management on a lot of Auros artifacts. Now we have them at the assessment level 2 so that we can expunge records with legal requirements. Within the legal requirements and make sure that they're there when they're supposed to be there and gone when they're supposed to be gone. User language selection, I know that so we've had the ability to have a language setting for the company. Now it's at the user level. So a user within your company could possibly choose a language, but we have to deploy the language files updates. You won't get that by default. So if you want multiple languages within your company, you have to work with our application support team. Okay? It changes all the user interface language. It does not interpret the KPAC, but it will change the buttons, the help text, the dialogues, all those things to the native language of or whatever language that user is selected. So our business in China kind of drove that change. Other questions? Okay, just a few more. I think this one's a really cool one. This was driven also by an OEM customer, automotive. The issues management now has the ability to show a lead responsible. We've always had a team or an individual, but now when there's a team, you can also have a specific person who's on the responsible team, but also the person, the lead person responsible. So we could just call it a lead. It's an optional configuration on every issue. You can include it or not include it. Okay, it just helps us identify who really is responsible for getting the issue closed. Project detail now has chapters with assignable metadata, so you can configure what those issue chapters look like and make sure that certain projects have certain metadata and other ones don't by project type. And the last thing, and there's also a customer-led initiative, was to have the vitality characteristic subparameters. For those of you who know, we have the statistical measurement of health of knowledge we call vitality. It is a composite algorithm of statistically driven, fairly complex set of algorithms that kind of sense the quality of the knowledge. And the individual component values are now segregated out into specific columns when you put that into the KPAC search results report. So you can not only see the composite score, but you can now see the individual component scores. If you want to get into the underlying metrics, you still have to visit the KPAC, go to the vitality report, and you can kind of see all the calculation numbers, the sub-calculation numbers that eventually give you a health characteristic number from 1 to 100. 100 being very healthy, 20 and below being extremely unhealthy in terms of knowledge health. Okay, I promise I'll keep this quick. This is the last thing I'm talking about is AI and knowledge aware. So a couple of you asked me, how does knowledge aware and AI interplay? So I'm sure we have some fairly well-versed practitioners of AI here. AI means a lot of different things to a lot of people. When we think about AI, we naturally, the big buzz are, wow, Google can recognize a cat in a photo 99.9% of the time. Okay, that's really cool. These are auto classifiers. Generally, they're using an AI technique called deep learning. So the thing about deep learning and many, but not all AI techniques is it requires data. And it requires not just data, it requires vast amounts of high quality data with high signal to noise, right? So when Google did the classifier for a cat, this was a couple years ago, that got a lot of notoriety how well they were able to do it. And natural language processing is, by the way, the same thing. They're recognizing speech patterns versus pixel elements that is a cat. They had to process many, many images and say, yep, that one was a cat, that one, and that's the learning class of data. Okay, so AI in engineering. The kind of AI that we think we can get to in the near term is the auto classifier. So we believe that the rich area is in the knowledge capture side. So where should knowledge exist? We can supply where knowledge should be created based on issues and classification of issues, visualizing that and assisting in automating the capture process. My personal belief, up for debate, is that AI doesn't yet have the capability to truly directly make engineering decisions for you. For example, although it's been tried extensively, there hasn't been yet an AI algorithm that was successfully making money on the stock market, right? Because things are changing in the stock market all the time. The rules of how stocks get priced, the events of the day, the data that's getting reported are constantly changing. There is no, it is a cat or it is not a cat, okay? It is the correct translation, it is not the correct translation. And the engineering, if all of you can agree, let me see some head nods, it's hard to do an ROI model because every project is different because a whole bunch of things have changed. The technology is changing, so the direct applicability to making engineering decisions I don't think is quite at hand in the next 5 or 6 years. But we do believe it will help us, the knowledge-aware technique, in helping to organize data to help the knowledge capture and automate the knowledge capture process. In fact, I believe it will have a profound effect in that capacity in the next 5 years. And at Auros, we do plan on being at the forefront of enabling AI to help us in the knowledge capture process. So we will have something in 8.2 on the issues collection, issues visualization side, and helping to migrate from issues to a knowledge packet and identifying where a knowledge packet should be created. That's our vision. Any questions? Please take the time. I'm done with what's new. Jeff mentioned a lot of you came from a long distance. We'll let you guys go. Please take the survey. Brittany, the survey is in the app. We believe we've been able to improve the conference year over year, and it's only because you guys have provided us feedback of what's working and what's not working. And I would appreciate your frank and critical analysis of what worked and what didn't, and we will take that, the Knowledge Aware Association will take that under advisement as we move forward. Josh, would you like to say anything? Steve, would you like to say anything? Oh, Steve's, Greg, Dan, Jeff, any closing? Anybody else? Anybody?
Yeah, sure. First of all, thank you to everybody for coming. Jeff mentioned it, I mentioned it earlier, people from Germany, people from Wisconsin, people from Italy, all over the nation. We really appreciate your time investment here. Hope that you have found some value in sharing and learning, networking. A couple more big thank yous to our presenters, Jim, Andrea, Vicky, Carlo. Thank you very much. We appreciate it. And of course, none of this would be possible without the help from Brittany. Brittany, way to go. And you'll find the survey in the mobile app, I think right down at the very bottom. Just do one last double check. Very bottom of the screen, under the menu, right? So use the little handlebar, fly out, the hamburger, fly out over there. The survey's right down at the very bottom. And we'll be hanging out for a little while. If anybody wants to commiserate, ask more questions, get introduced to other people within the industry, please approach us. So thank you.